Why should you reach for Tony Pollard and Jahmyr Gibbs in your fantasy football drafts in 2023? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie, Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher for NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
All right, Michelle, we've done a lot of fun shows this week, including our look at the safest picks on the board, the most reliable kind of high floor fantasy performers. And we looked at the riskiest picks on the board. Now we're going to look at players that we just love and we're willing to take ahead of their consensus ranking, average draft position, just looking all across the board, not just at their position, but maybe taking them a little bit more aggressively than the market. So we're excited to break those down for you. We'll do this like we did the previous shows here, looking at running backs, wide receivers, and quarterbacks and tight ends that you should be maybe picking a little bit earlier than they should be going in drafts. Well, we think they should be going earlier in drafts. So we'll break that down for you. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. So that's all you need to put in $5 and get that bet, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started and checking them out now. We have a week before the season, Michelle, so it's exciting to break things down. And today we've picked guys that we're willing to bang the table for, guys that we will draft and convince ourselves here that we want to take them earlier than the market. So let's start at running back. I mean, you've been talking about Alexander Mattison and Khalil Herbert plenty, but there's two other guys maybe earlier on the board that you're also looking to take, maybe ahead of some wide receivers that are going ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to start right at the top of the draft, and it's Bijan Robinson. It might be silly to say you're going to reach on him, but right now, I mean, I've been seeing him drop in the first round a bit, go 6th, 7th, 8th. I'm saying if you're pick 101, I'm okay taking him right there. And at the latest, I'm taking him at 102. If Christian McCaffrey goes 1, that's fine. But then I'm taking Robinson over any of the wide receivers. We have to talk about just how talented this running back is. I know everyone's like, oh, he's a rookie, but we have to understand, he's not just any old rookie. He's the first running back with a 99 next-gen stats production score since 2001. And if you just look at the score since 2015, these are the only guys that received over a 94 or above production score. It's Bijan Robinson, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott, and Breece Hall. And he got a 99. And those are the only guys with 94 and above. And you're really just comparing him here to a Christian McCaffrey type where he can get it done on the ground and as a receiver, but at an elite level. And their combine comparisons are almost identical, which is crazy, except Robinson is, a good 13 pounds heavier than McCaffrey was. And then I just pulled out this little stat, right? If you're just looking at Power 5 players since 2000, there's only been 2 guys that have had 500 plus rush attempts, 50 plus receptions in college to average 6 yards or more on their rush attempts and average 12 or more on their receiving receptions. And it's Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey. Those are the only guys to do it. He's not just a regular rookie coming out of school. And when you're looking at what the running backs did last year with Desmond Ridder as a starter, so he started 4 games, weeks 15 through 18. The Falcons running backs averaged the 3rd most fantasy points per game in half PPR among all teams running backs, behind only the 49ers with CMC and the Chiefs during that time. So I'm taking him at the 101. Do you think that's crazy, Vinny?
I don't think it's crazy. I think we know that there's volatility. You never know among those top backs who's going to be the top finisher. We know that didn't happen exactly like we planned last year either with Jonathan Taylor. So things change very quickly in this league, and the big change is Bijan Robinson. I think the environment is perfect for him, right? I mean, this is already an elite rushing attack. They've got a very good offensive line. That's what they're going to do. It's also a high volume rushing attack because they know they're elite. And this is Arthur Smith, and the Derrick Henry comparisons have been made in terms of the workload that Bijan Robinson might get right away. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I think the only question is, Michelle, I think you look at him and Christian McCaffrey really as a collective group here, running back at the top. Is there a reason that you would just not include Justin Jefferson in this group?
I really want to grab the running back that can be the difference maker because those fade away real fast, right? By the
Yeah.
time you get to the end of the second round, those guys that you know are going to get the workload and just dominate, they're gone. So
Yeah.
you can find really good wide receivers in the second, third, fourth round, or even, I mean, every year there's guys that break out. Like, how late was Christian Kirk going last year? And he ended up
Yeah.
being a really good wide receiver for you. So you can find those guys late.
Yeah, that's really true to have one of these workhorse backs. And also with Bijan Robinson, you open yourself up to, hey, I can load my backfield with two really good guys at RB1 and RB2. I could go hero, RB. It gives you a lot of possibilities going forward in the draft. And another guy you like is also going pretty high, but I think he's slipping behind some more familiar names. Like, I think we look at Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. Where would you put Tony Pollard in that group, Michelle? And are you taking him over those guys?
Yeah, I'm happy to take Tony Pollard at the end of the first round. If I'm sitting there and this is where like Justin Jefferson would have to already be gone, right? Tyreek Hill gone, those top wide receivers. But if I'm eyeing Tony Pollard or like Stephon Diggs or Nick Chubb, or I still like Derrick Henry just a little bit more, but at the end of the first round, I'm happy to reach for Tony Pollard, even though he's regularly going like middle of the second round. But I just think he has an opportunity to be the running back one this year. I mean, last year, Ezekiel Elliott annoyingly stole 248 touches from Pollard. Like, we all thought that was ridiculous. Pollard was clearly the more efficient guy, but Pollard still put up the 12th most scrimmage yards among all running backs last season with that many touches stolen away from him. No running back averaged more than Pollard's 5.9 yards per touch last season, minimum 150 touches. And if we get Pollard just 100 of those 248 vacated touches, I don't think that's that much to say. I think that's very realistic. That already projects him to have over 1,900 scrimmage yards. That already projects him to have 319 fantasy points. If you're going off of how many fantasy points per touch he scored last year, that would have put him as the running back one, tied with Austin Eckler in half PPR last year. So I truly think he has that potential to be the running back one with a pretty high floor as well, being the only running back in such a great Cowboys offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is how I would look at it. I am picking ninth in a 14-team league, which is more difficult here, but I'm seeing different mock drafts where actually Robinson is slipping. If Robinson slips somehow to 9, I'm grabbing him. I think we have a tendency to maybe draft quarterbacks earlier in this league, so that could come into play. Also, if you just look at the board, right, and start in Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler, then Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase, Travis Kelce, you're getting close here to maybe Bijan Robinson dropping into a really good spot in the middle of the first round. So that's something you'd consider. So I think I definitely take Bijan Robinson third among the running backs at worst. I know I won't have to worry about the decision because I think he might be the guy available. I don't need to worry about McCaffrey and Eckler. The other question is Tony Pollard, where I would take him. I think maybe Nick Chubb ahead of Tony Pollard. That's the only guy, though. I wouldn't take Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley in between him and Bijan. So I just like Nick Chubb in his situation. I know I can trust him here for the most part, even if he's not going to have high passing volume. So he's a guy in between, but I do agree with you that these two guys should be going ahead. And every time I see Barkley or Henry, or even some people are reaching on Josh Jacobs now, no, I'm going in these two directions with Robinson and Pollard, the upside all the way. Now, I have upside on my list as well, Michelle, and I have the other rookie. I've talked about him earlier, Jahmyr Gibbs. And now I know everyone's looking at Dave Montgomery as a pretty good value later in the draft, but again, you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs very early. He's an explosive player. You have an elite running game as well. Talk about Atlanta having a great offensive line. Detroit has one as well. And this is what they want to do. They want to take pressure off Jared Goff. They need to throw to Jahmyr Gibbs early because you don't have Jameson Williams. And Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, some of these other guys after Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. So he's going to have to be involved in the passing game early. I think he's a very good explosive finisher in this offense, and I think that's maybe being forgotten. It's not David Montgomery is suddenly Jamal Williams. He's never been a big touchdown scorer, where Gibbs, we know, can finish drives from his career at Alabama. So I really like Jahmyr Gibbs, just in a great situation. They, again, just follow the draft pick, where they took him, what he means to this offense. I think he's going to have a big role right away, and I think I'm going to match up against the Chiefs. I think he can have a big game, because I think that's the only way they can stay in the game with him with all purpose. So I love Jahmyr Gibbs right away there, and I'm going to target him maybe on that comeback, Michelle. I'm hoping for it. If he slips a little bit, I'm looking at it if I get one of these other running backs. And then Javonte Williams, he's going a little bit lower. I don't get it right now why he's still a value, because there's no real question about his health at this point, I don't think. I mean, there's Samaje Perine as well, and it's Sean Payton. He's going to get the best out of running backs here. I know he likes to use multiple backs, but he's had multiple backs go off in fantasy at the same time. And you look at his Broncos offense, they're going to have to run the ball. And you get the Raiders matchup right away to get going here. I think it's Commanders in week 2. So he's going to be off to a hot start here. And that's what you want sometimes as well. I know you're looking long-term, but Javonte Williams, again, should be drafted comfortably as an RB2. And I think you can reach a little bit for him ahead of some of those kind of uninspiring wide receivers that are in that same range.
Yeah, I was so high on Gibbs to start the offseason. I think I'm getting the Lions helmets in my head, right? Like I'm helmet scouting almost, where I'm like, how many times has a Lions running back let us down, right? It was Kerryon Johnson, or it was Amir Abdullah, or it was DeAndre Swift, like all these guys that were super talented, and they just always ruined them. It seems like, but they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs so high. They seem to be all in on him. He should be so good this year, especially in half or full PPR. So I'm there with you. I'm willing to reach a little bit for him, but he does make me nervous. And then Javonte Williams, with his cost right now, I think it's fine to reach on him. It's hard with him because he hasn't lived up to his expectations. So hopefully, and we're just putting so much on Sean Payton at this point to just fix the entire offense. But yeah, I agree with you. Like if you didn't grab running backs early and you really need to kind of shoot for a guy that can be an RB1, that's a good pick there at the end or in the middle of your drafts. Before we get into our favorite wide receivers to reach on in 2023 drafts, let's talk about FanDuel for a second here. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's absurd, because NFL Sunday Ticket is the best thing ever. And if you don't get to experience your Sundays watching the NFL Sunday Ticket, I'm telling you, you are missing out. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you could be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. I feel like, Vinny, I've talked about my 2 wide receivers quite a bit this offseason. So I want you to hit on your wide receivers first, and then I'll quickly go through mine again at the end of yours.
Yeah, I mixed it up a little bit. I have a guy that we haven't talked about as much in this mix. I have talked about this first guy quite a bit, is Chris Olave of the Saints. I just like his role on this team, and Derek Carr feeding him the ball, and he's going to feed him the ball often. He's just as talented as Garrett Wilson. He's just as in a favorable position as Garrett Wilson, as being the go-to guy, and then figuring out what's behind him with Michael Thomas. We'll see if he can hold up. You look at Juwan Johnson and some of the other weapons they have there. They're going to have to throw a ton to Chris Olave. All his metrics with air yards and all that were off the charts good last year. I don't know, again, Derek Carr is a major upgrade of Randy Dalton or Jameis Winston, but I do like the fact that he's going to pepper him with targets. He's kind of a one guy, throw too often. He's going to scheme himself open with his route running. So, and Derek Carr likes to throw only to open guys. So Chris Olave is going to find himself open quite a bit on this offense. And I think he has to be incorporated in the short to intermediate passing game more when Alvin Kamara's out early in the season. So that's going to help him. And great matchup in week 1 against the Titans to get off to a good start. I think this is important. I think it's a bit underrated when you have those guys that kind of build momentum in week one. They're going to play off that. But I like Chris Olave all the way, all season long. The talent there is off the charts good. I think he's interchangeable with Garrett Wilson. I think they're equal in what they can do on the field. And I think Garrett Wilson obviously getting the hype because of Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, but Olave still right there behind him. And if he's off the board, I might consider him Olave after Wilson, maybe ahead of Davante Adams. That's how high I am on this player here in 2023. Now, my other pick is Zay Flowers, and he's going way down there, wide receiver 40, 45, somewhere in that range. If I'm going to take a shot on one Ravens receiver, it's not going to be Rashad Bateman, not Odell Beckham Jr., certainly not Nelson Aguilar at this point, Michelle. So this is the guy. I just think he's going to be involved a lot in their offense. They used a first-round pick on him for a reason. We heard the GM, Eric DeCosta, complain about not having receivers, and Rashad Bateman took offense to that. Well, he's hurt, and he's not that good. So when you look at it overall, this is a complete receiver that is small. He's small, but it doesn't really matter. I think there's a favorable comparison to Tyler Lockett, that he could be that type of player in this offense. And just a lot of concepts here that I like that they're going to scheme up the Zay Flowers. And Todd Monken had some time with the Bucks. I think there's a little bit of a smaller Chris Godwin in him as well. So I look at a lot of parallels I like in Zay Flowers. And if I'm going for a Ravens pass catcher after Mark Andrews, he's clearly the one.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I'm not taking a shot on Odell Beckham Jr. Like, what is his ceiling really at this point in his career, especially in this offense? Like, I don't see him doing very well. But Zay Flowers and his ability after the catch, or his ability to get loose deep, that's the kind of guy I want to take the bet on. And I have been getting warmer and warmer on Zay Flowers as we get closer to our fantasy draft. So he is a guy I'm eyeing. I'm not like needing to reach on him, maybe like you or other people that are super high on him, but I have warmed up to the idea of taking him later in my drafts. And then Chris Olave is, he's just one of those guys that has the same exact potential as Garrett Wilson, but not getting enough hype. Now, I'm still taking Garrett Wilson over Olave just because
I think so. You have to.
You have that Aaron Rodgers connection, and it's just like it's hard to skip out on that. But
Aaron
I think
Rodgers
after
is better than Derek Carr. That's what.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's really hard to get too excited about any wide receiver, getting targets from Derek Carr, but Devontae Adams did great last year with Derek Carr. And I think that's calmed my nerves a little bit, about Olave. So, and once you get to that spot, I mean, after Olave, it's Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley. Like, that's a huge jump off. So yeah, I want to make sure at the very least that I'm getting Olave if I miss out on all the other top guys. So I think that's a fine reach there. And then my two guys, you definitely know I love them. It's Jahan Dotson, first off, and he just needs to be on my team. So I'm reaching for him. Like, I need to get him on my roster because I think he is the second-year breakout. I think besides Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who already broke out as rookies, I think he is the real deal second-year breakout. So once he came back from his hamstring injury and he was fully healthy and actually, playing a lot of snaps, he was averaging close to 70 receiving yards per game, had 3 receiving touchdowns over the last 5 games of the season from weeks 13 through 18. Dotson and McLaurin both recorded 70-plus receiving yards in 3 of their last 4 games. And it was Dotson who led the team with 26 targets, with 16 receptions, with 290 receiving yards. He led in all those categories from those last 4 weeks of the season. And that's pretty much that prime spot, right? For what rookie wide receivers to be breaking out. That's when it comes at the end of the year. So I love to see that. And when we're talking about this preseason, I mean, Sam Howell has clearly favored Jahan Dotson. So with Sam Howell's targets this year, it's Jahan Dotson who's led in Sam Howell's targets with 9. No other player got more than 5. And he's gotten 106 of his yards as well. No other player had more than 48. So you see that connection already. And I'm just all in on going with Jahan Dotson as that second-year breakout. And then also, I'm willing to reach on Gabe Davis, the Bills wide receiver. I mean, last year he was going so incredibly high that it was so risky. Now he's going so stupid low just because we all reached too high on him, right? And we're all overlooking that he was injured. He hurt his ankle, and clearly that messed with him. But they're saying he's fully healthy this year. He's looking good. We're also overlooking Josh Allen's injury and how much that affected the entire team, and everybody, fantasy value went down at that point. And now he's being drafted. I mean, what, ninth, 10th round? Like, I'm willing to spend an 8th round pick on Gabe Davis and reach on him a bet when we know that he has that huge play ability. So when we're just looking at guys that have had 100 plus receptions over the last 3 years, Gabe Davis has averaged the 5th most fantasy points per touch in half point PPR leagues or half point leagues, only behind Mike Evans, Jahmyr Chase, Devontae Adams, and Tyler Lockett. And it's right above AJ Brown. So what he's done with his opportunities has been great. And he's the clear-cut second target in this offense. I think he's going to have great opportunity this year. And you don't need him to perform like you were expecting last year. You just need him to be a good option to plug in when you have some bye weeks because you're taking him so late. So I really want Gabe Davis on my bench for depth at the wide receiver position this year.
Yeah, those are good calls. And I think Jahan Dotson's price is actually slowly creeping up because of the turf toe injury to Terry McLaurin. It already looks questionable for week 1. So maybe the discount isn't as great, but he's still worth going after here. And I think I would take him, Michelle, over some second-year guys that we've talked about a little bit. I'd take him over Drake London. I'd take him over Christian Watson. I just think it right now, like, I like his situation a lot. And I think the talent is there. I think he's a better overall receiver than Drake London. And I don't love London's situation with a shaky quarterback and a team that runs a lot, where I think the Commanders are going to have to throw quite a bit with this offense just because their defense will be good at times, but I think it'll be up and down. And I think Sam Howell is kind of the quarterback that's going to steer him that way. So I do like Jahan Dotson a lot. Gabe Davis, yeah, where he's going is really cheap. And I've gotten hotter on Gabe Davis here. I did have him on one team, and he actually finished, if you look at the average scoring, the way it broken out, he finished at wide receiver 3, and that's kind of where I drafted him last year. So I'm not that disappointed in what he gave me because I didn't overhype him. I just took him right where I wanted him last year. And he was good as a wide receiver 3. He had that one big game with the long touchdowns. So I think he can build on that a little bit more. And what's driven more confidence here is Dalton Kincaid needs a little bit more time. Khalil Shakir has been a little bit disappointing here. They don't have a lot behind Stephon Diggs. So I think Gabe Davis is really bumped up for me as the kind of the offseason has gone on. So I really like those two calls here. And really, I think any of these guys at different points in your draft are definitely worth being aggressive for. And I think, again, good steals at wide receiver 3 that could actually end up as wide receiver 2s for a team. Now, we each have a quarterback and tight end that we've saved for the last segment here. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We'll wrap it up here with our last look before Labor Day. Then we'll turn our attention to week 1, Michelle. It's exciting, and give you some advice there. We're Locked On Fantasy Football, your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in the league. We're part of Locked On Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day. All right, Michelle, we're up to the quarterback and tight end that we're willing to spend up to get here, reach for, so to speak. I don't like to use the word reach. I just think we're higher on these guys, and we're going to be smarter than everyone else by going after these picks. So you got 2 interesting picks. One guy you're going to have to invest a really high pick in, and the other guy, I'm not quite sure where he's going right now. So tell us about your quarterback and tight end.
Yeah, let's start with the quarterback here. It's Justin Fields. So my issue this offseason is that I love 2 quarterbacks, right? It's Justin Fields and Justin Herbert. I think both are going to be great this year. But I do think Justin Fields is the safer pick with the same upside, right? He does not have that potential to just fail, like kind of like Herbert did last year because of his rushing. I mean, there's only 2 quarterbacks that can put up 1,100 rushing yards or even 1,000 rushing yards in a season with ease, right? And it's Fields and it's Lamar Jackson. And if you were to tell us, I mean, the biggest thing with Lamar Jackson right now is we can't trust he'll stay healthy, right? Because he's missed 5 games each of the last 2 seasons. But anyone would be excited to have Lamar Jackson on their team if they knew he was going to stay healthy, because when he's on the field, he's a fantastic fantasy scorer. Justin Fields is on that same level of rushing ability as Lamar, and it's only those 2 guys as of right now. We'll see what Anthony Richardson can do in the year or in his career, but the thing with Justin Fields is he's still going as like the quarterback 5, quarterback 6 in this year's draft when he was the quarterback 5 last year with a super, super slow start. Weeks 1 through 6 only averaged 12 fantasy points per game. The rest of the season from week 7 through 17 averaged 25 fantasy points per game. Only Hurts and Mahomes averaged more during that span. And when you're looking during that span, it was all really consistently high games. I mean, he scored over 20 fantasy points in 6 games during that span. Mahomes had 7, Hurts had 8. Those were the only guys with more, and no one else had 6 with Fields. Burrow and Josh Allen were at 5. So what he was doing during that time was special, and it was a difference maker for your team. And that's what you need if you're going to spend an early draft pick on quarterbacks. But Fields isn't going as early as Hurts and Mahomes and Allen, right? He's going a few rounds later. He's actually going even later than Joe Burrow. I'm taking Fields over Joe Burrow 100 times, over 100 out of 100 times, especially now that he has DJ Moore. I'm calling that third-year breakout the same way Allen and Hurts did it. And if you had Allen or Hurts in their third year, you were thrilled in fantasy. So I'm willing to reach on him just a little bit. I don't think you have to reach too far, but at the end of the 4th round, early 5th round, if you're sitting there and you're trying your eye on a quarterback, I think it's a great pick there. And Travis Kelce, sounds silly to say you're going to reach on Travis Kelce, but let me explain. If CMC and Bijan Robinson are off the board and I am pick 103, I'm taking Travis Kelce. If those two guys are off the board, I'm moving on to Travis Kelce. Yes, I would even take him over Justin Jefferson because of the difference maker he is in your tight end spot. He's going to be the tight end 1, right? He's a tight end 1 every single season since 2016, except for 2021. He was a tight end 2 by a little bit, right? But he's going to end at the top. He scored 100 more fantasy points than any other tight end last year, and only 6 tight ends scored 150 points. Like, the difference between him and the tight end 6 last year was him and Tyler Higbee. Like, Tyler Higbee was pretty much pointless most of the year, and he was a tight end 6. And then you had Travis Kelce just dominate. And you're playing basically a top tier elite wide receiver in your tight end spot. He scored as many points as Stephon Diggs. They nearly identical. I mean, 316.6, 316.3. You're getting to play Stephon Diggs in your tight end spot while everyone else has to play scrubs. I mean, everyone else is dying out there trying to find a viable tight end to plug in to just get them 10 points. Like, that's a great week for you if you could just find that. And you get to play Stephon freaking Diggs in your tight end spot. The advantage you have there is insane. Any team I had Travis Kelce in last year, it just won. Like, because it didn't matter the rest of the team. You had such an advantage that I'm taking him at the 103 if those 2 running backs are gone. That's how high I'm high. Like, that's how much I'm reaching for him. Like, he's a 1st round pick anyways, but I'm just saying I'll take him over any wide receiver.
Yeah, that's a good call because I've been looking at him at the 4th or 5th pick. So I do have Jefferson maybe a little bit ahead, only because I think Jefferson we haven't seen like the ceiling year that he could really explode here in the pass happy.
You don't think we saw a ceiling year last year?
No, I think the touchdowns are something that we can see. That's the biggest thing with Jefferson that I still think. I do like Jefferson quite a bit, but I'm also a big fan of Jefferson, but I would take him as early as 4, Kelce. I think that's where I would target him. I don't know if I would put Bijan right there with maybe I would take him 3, I guess, and put Bijan 4 behind Kelce. So I'm just as high on him as you are. I mean, I did draft him late last year. He was my circled pick. I said I was going to take him no matter what. I took him. I think it was 9. So I was a little bit ahead of people last year as well. So I think I liked it, and I want some more Travis Kelce if I'm in the right position to do it. And of course, he's not off the board, which could have actually happened in a lot of leagues because we're giving this advice here. So you're going to have a pretty high pick to get him. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he just gets forgotten. Everyone that gets enamored with running backs and wide receivers, including Ja'Marr Chase in the mix. I think I would take Kelce over Ja'Marr Chase. I think I'd take Kelce over Austin Eckler at this point. So yeah, maybe I do like him 3rd, only behind McCaffrey and Jefferson versus McCaffrey and Robinson. So that's a little bit of difference there. We have a big difference at quarterback. I'll get into that first. I have Trevor Lawrence, the same draft that they were picked in. I think I would draft Lawrence over Fields. And
what?
Why.
Wait,
yes,
no, you would not. No, you would not.
I would think about it, and here's why. It depends on how it breaks down, and I think I can get Lawrence a little bit later than Fields, and I like it because there's a lot of potential for me to stack Lawrence with Calvin Ridley. I think it's set up there, teed up there that I would go after. It's a lot easier for me to do that. And I also think Justin Fields, I don't think I can reach on him because I think he's going to be very expensive. I know where he's going now, but I think I would consider it as a better value. Let's just say that. Like if Justin Fields came and dropped a little bit, I would think about it, but I would rather target Lawrence a round or two later than Fields 2 rounds earlier because I can load up my team. I don't think the difference is going to be as big. The biggest thing about Justin Fields that we still need to figure out is his passing, and there's been mixed reports on that in terms of can he take that leap to support the running. Then you have to consider the durability issue, right? You look at his over-under in passing yards, it's 2,800. I'd like it a little bit higher than that to make me feel comfortable. I know he's got the high rushing floor, but what if he breaks down? He runs too much. Or they say, look, Khalil Herbert's talented. We want to give him the ball a little bit more and protect our QB and want him to evolve a little bit. Maybe trades out for the short pass game. Maybe they force him into being a passer. I don't think he's quite there with Jalen Hurts. Like, I think Jalen Hurts was, I think, a rare personality where you knew he was driven to be great. Where I don't know that with Justin Fields yet. I mean, Trevor Lawrence obviously has been around a lot of greatness. So I think the biggest key is Lawrence. Can he run enough to make up for what Justin Fields has on the ground? Because I know he's going to pass better than Justin Fields with the weapons he has. So it's close, but again, I like him because I don't have to reach as much to get him and feel very comfortable, but that's kind of my cutoff. If I can't get Justin Herbert, this is the guy I'm going off next. I would drop down to Kirk Cousins next, and that's probably where I'm looking at quarterback. And if not, I go all the way down to Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Jordan Love. So that's how I'm looking at it, quarterback this year. Now, my guy that I'm going after, it's a little bit thinking with Travis Kelce, but I want to not have that ability to invest too high. I think there's going to be some tight ends that can put up some big numbers this year. I think we look at Mark Andrews there. I don't know if the difference is going to be as much with Kelce this year. He was the guy that you mentioned there. Kelce finished behind in 2021. And then TJ Hawkinson is such a good spot. If you put together his numbers from last year, more than 80 receptions, he was getting close, pushing for 1,000 receiving yards. And he had 6 touchdowns. And now he's in a situation where there's no Adam Thielen. So they're going to have to throw to someone in the red zone a little bit more. And Jordan Addison's still getting used to it here. Again, Justin Jefferson we talked about, but we know Hawkinson is kind of their 2 guy here. I mean, he's the guy that they're going to throw to next. So I really like Hawkinson. If I can't get Kelce, I want to make sure I try to get Hawkinson. It's going to be hard to pull this off, Michelle. I'm trying to do all these things and get Calvin Ridley and Hawkinson. That's a decision I have to make in a lot of drafts. I think it really depends. If I get a Garrett Wilson early in my drafts or Chris Olave, I'm less inclined to take Calvin Ridley, more inclined to take Hawkinson there with my, I guess you have to almost use the 3rd round pick on him in a lot of leagues. So I'm willing to take him there with my 3rd round pick if I'm okay with my picks at running back and wide receiver to open the draft.
Yeah, I will say, I feel like Hawkinson's falling down board just a little bit lately. He was going super high earlier this summer if you're doing best ball drafts, but it's like the vibes from him coming out of camp are weird. I've been cooling off on TJ Hawkinson. I was super, super high on him, I had him higher than Mark Andrews. I've switched that now. I have Mark Andrews higher than Hawkinson for just my rankings, but like, I don't know, the vibes seem off. Like he hasn't been practicing a whole ton because the ear injury, and then he wants a contract. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But if he's on the field playing, he should be a great tight end option, right? So that all just comes down to all those situations if they can figure out as a team. And with Lawrence, I don't see the same path for him to be like, I think the path for Justin Fields to be a top 3 quarterback is pretty clear, right? Run a lot, and get a little bit better from last year because he was already the quarterback 5. You just have to get a little bit better as a passer from last year, score more touchdowns, and like you could see that path there. With Lawrence, he has to throw 40 passing touchdowns to be a top 3 quarterback this year.
And I think that's possible. That's why
it's definitely possible for sure, especially with the weapons he has. It just seems a little bit more unrealistic, right? Like the path to get there just seems so much easier for Fields and Lawrence, and that's why I would rather just reach on taking Fields than settle for Lawrence. But I mean, yeah, if he ends up being who he was supposed to be coming out of the draft, you're going to be thrilled. But that's why I'm just not as high on Lawrence as you are this year.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's going to be an interesting thing we're going to watch between those 2 quarterbacks, obviously tied together a lot in the draft. So that's going to be fun. Clearly, we're not going to compare either to Zach Wilson going forward. So that's what we have here. So I'm really interested about that. I'm really interested to see how these reaches play out for us. But these are guys, again, that we've listed that you should definitely go after a little bit earlier than their ranking and ADP. So that's going to do it here. Locked On Fantasy Football, your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in your league. For the show, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.